tower.
Oh, totally.
Like you are sweating over the radar, you're clutching a spreadsheet, making absolutely sure the appetizer lands on the table before the roast beef takes off.
Right, right.
The entire focus is just, I mean, it's just on avoiding a collision.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a pure logistical exercise, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Like, you are managing timelines instead of actually connecting with the people sitting in your dining room. The
Exactly.
stress just completely eclipses the hospitality.
That is exactly what I was thinking about when I was looking through the sources for today's deep dive. I was reading through these excerpts from Neelam Batra's renowned book, 1000 Indian Recipes. And honestly, I was expecting to just learn, the mechanics of a good curry.
Right, like just a standard cookbook.
Yeah, exactly. But what I found was this completely different operating system for how to feed people. It flipped that whole air traffic control script entirely. We are looking at a culture that uses food not just for calories, but as this deeply intentional tool for connection, aesthetics, and even genuine spiritual practice.
And, looking at that approach is just such a necessary contrast to how we live right now.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we are currently in an era of incredibly solitary, rushed eating. People consume prepackaged meals while, like, standing over the kitchen sink,
I am definitely guilty of that.
right? Or, eating a granola bar in the car on the way to work. But when you study the Indian approach to meal times, you are really looking at a masterclass in intentionality. The sources paint this vivid picture, vibrant, spice-filled market stalls and warm, bustling family kitchens,
Yeah.
which feels miles away from eating a sad sandwich while staring at a smartphone.
Okay, let's unpack this because the philosophy that really anchors this whole mindset comes down to a specific Sanskrit principle that's mentioned in Batra's text, and that is Atithi Devo Bhava.
Right.
And the literal translation provided is the guest is God. And I was trying to map that onto my own life. Like, imagine if a friend dropped by unannounced on a random Tuesday.
Panic. Pure panic, usually.
Yes. Instead of panicking because there are dishes in your sink, your default cultural reflex was to treat them as if a literal divine being had just walked through your front door.
Well, the psychology behind that phrase is what makes it functional rather than just, poetic.
Okay.
Because the philosophy isn't suggesting you simply grovel before anyone who rings the doorbell.
Right, right.
It is built on a deeply reciprocal belief. Basically, the idea is that God will treat you exactly as you treat your guests.
Oh, wow. So the hospitality is an investment in your own spiritual well-being.
Precisely. Spontaneous hospitality stops being this massive inconvenience that ruins your evening plans. It transforms into an opportunity.
I love that.
When you welcome someone with an open heart and a full table, you are actively securing good karma. Sharing food becomes the primary vehicle for fostering these incredibly strong bonds of community.
And that reciprocal nature helps explain a major distinction Baldrona makes in the text, right? Because she draws a really hard line between everyday family meals and meals meant for company.
Yes, they operate very differently.
Right, because for the everyday dinners, the focus is internal. The text highlights that these meals are built on fresh generational recipes. Like, this is where mothers teach daughters in the kitchen.
And that teaching element is crucial because it goes far beyond just, handing down a list of ingredients.
Right.
The kitchen functions as a classroom for cultural values, the rhythm of chopping vegetables, the sensory experience of blooming spices in hot oil.
Mm.
These actions reinforce family bonds through shared labor. It's this closed, intimate circle.
But then someone knocks on the door,
Right.
the circle opens, you have company, and the text notes that the meal fundamentally shifts. You aren't just adding an extra chair to the table. The number of
Yep.
dishes expands, special drinks are brought out, appetizers suddenly appear out of nowhere.
Yeah, it scales up.
And the presentation shifts to a bountiful family-style spread.
And, serving family style in this context isn't just about saving the host from plating individual portions.
Yeah.
Yeah, Batra points out that it's deliberately done to enhance flavor pairing. By putting everything in the center of the table,
Yeah.
you are granting the guest the agency to mix and match the flavors, the sauces, and the textures on their own plate according to their own preference.
Okay, wait. I have to challenge this premise, though.
Go for it.
If I'm hosting, and suddenly I have to pivot from a simple family dinner to this divine feast with expanded dishes, drinks, and appetizers just because someone dropped by, that doesn't sound joyous.
No.
No, that sounds like juggling flaming torches. I mean, how is this actually sustainable for a normal household?
Well, it seems impossible if you look at it through the lens of Western menu planning.
Okay.
Because in the West, you typically have one giant centerpiece, like a roast, and a couple of sides. And if the roast burns, the meal is ruined.
Right, total disaster.
But Indian menu planning relies on an entirely different architecture. There is a deeply ingrained structural rule here, which we can call the wet and dry principle,
The wet and dry principle, I saw that in the text, but how does that actually save the host from a nervous breakdown?
because it creates a formula that prevents palate fatigue and relies on variety rather than perfection.
Interesting.
A typical well-planned Indian meal must balance wet dishes, which are your rich, saucy curries, with dry dishes, which are usually crisp, heavily spiced vegetables without a gravy.
Okay, so you aren't just eating a bowl of uniform stew, and you aren't chewing through a plate of dry roasted carrots. You are alternating.
Yes, you pair the wet and the dry, and then you anchor them with a grounding starch, like chapatis or basmati rice.
Right, the staples.
Exactly. And finally, you introduce a cooling element, like a plain yogurt or a raita. Think about the sensory mechanism at play here.
Okay.
When you eat a heavy, saucy dish, your palate eventually tires of the richness, but then the crisp, dry vegetable resets your mouth.
Oh, that makes sense.
The spicy heat builds up, and the cooling yogurt neutralizes it. The brain stays engaged with the meal because the textures and temperatures are constantly contrasting.
That makes the menu a landscape of choices rather than a single performance. But, I mean, even with a formula dealing with modern dietary preferences, the vegetarians, the gluten-free folks, the meat eaters, while balancing wet, dry, hot, and cool, that still seems incredibly daunting.
It does, but Batra's text provides a remarkably elegant solution to that problem, and that is the heavy inclusion of vegetarian options.
Right.
In Indian cuisine, vegetables are not relegated to side dishes. They are the starring role.
Mm.
Even in a menu designed around meat, the inclusion of several distinct, robust vegetable dishes ensures a harmonious balance.
Because if you have enough variety on the table, it becomes mathematically certain that everyone will find a complete, satisfying meal, regardless of what they can or cannot eat.
Exactly. It accommodates everyone without the host having to act like a short-order cook, making, separate meals for every single person. And this variety serves an aesthetic purpose, too.
Mm.
Batra is very strict about the visual component of the meal.
She is. The source makes it clear that we eat with our eyes first. She insists that even if a dish is inherently dull-colored like a simple brown lentil stew, it requires simple garnishes of contrasting colors.
Yes.
She suggests adding a sprinkle of chopped green cilantro, a dusting of warm brown garam masala, or like a bright red pop of paprika.
And that aesthetic touch is non-negotiable because it actually primes the digestive system.
Really?
Yeah, when you bring the food to life visually, it engages the diner's anticipation before they even lift a fork. It's signaling to the brain that care and attention have been poured into this offering.
And to help people who aren't used to this architecture, Batra actually outlines several themed menus as starting points. I found her American pantry meal fascinating. It uses ingredients you can find in any standard grocery store to create this balance. She pairs ginger chicken with a fresh tomato salad and a sweet dessert.
She also details a light weeknight dinner featuring broiled fish, mung beans, and fresh fruits.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and you can clearly see the architecture there, right? The rich, wet protein of the fish, the earthy, grounding legume, and the bright, sweet contrast of the fruit.
And then she scales it all the way up to a Diwali celebration menu, which leans heavily into vegetarian options, reflecting the spiritual nature of the festival. Or, a full-blown Indian banquet, which is the ultimate expression of that multi-dish, family-style spread.
But, it's easy to talk about a grand Diwali banquet in theory.
Right.
If a guest drops by unannounced on a Tuesday, you can't magically materialize a wet and dry feast in 10 minutes while the rice is still cooking.
No, definitely not.
So what are the actual mechanics of pulling off that spontaneous hospitality?
Well, you need an arsenal.
Yes.
The source points out this deep cultural obsession with starters and snacks. Because entertaining guests at a moment's notice is the standard, having food ready to go immediately is vital. And Batra categorizes these into two main types. First, you have the pre-made, storable snacks.
Oh, these are the absolute lifesavers of the pantry.
Exactly. Things like lentil wafers, called paw pad, or spicy bhuji mixes. These are savory items that you can keep in an airtight container for weeks.
Right.
It's the philosophical equivalent of keeping a really good frozen pizza and a nice bottle of wine on hand for emergencies, but elevated. It's actively anticipating human connection.
And while the guest is nibbling on those pantry staples and socializing, the host has time to pivot to the second category, the fresh, hot snacks.
Right, like the fritters.
Fritters, samosas, items that are whipped up in the moment. It gives the room a focal point
Yeah.
and keeps the guests occupied while the main wet and dry architecture of the meal is being assembled in the kitchen.
But you can't assemble that meal without the connective tissue of the cuisine, which brings us to the staples. And honestly, nothing in the text carries more weight than rice.
Oh, absolutely.
It is described as having immense spiritual and social significance, far beyond just being a side dish.
It is fully integrated into the foundation of daily and religious life. I mean, rice is offered to deities in religious ceremonies before worshipers ever consume it.
It is showered on brides at weddings as a physical blessing of prosperity.
And when you take that foundational staple and combine it with the other primary building block dal, which covers dried beans, lentils, and peas, you get the ultimate expression of comfort.
Oh, yeah.
The text specifically highlights a dish called khichdi.
Right.
It's a soft-cooked, deeply soothing combination of rice and dal. It represents nourishment in its purest form within the Indian culinary lexicon.
The text also focuses a lot on paneer cheese, and what struck me wasn't just how it's used in curries, but how it's made.
Yeah, the process.
Right. The source points out that making paneer at home is a shared household activity. Boiling the milk, adding the acid to curdle it, straining the curds through cheesecloth, and pressing it, it's a communal process.
Yeah.
The physical act of preparing the staple is an act of reinforcing community bonds.
So the staples are the canvas, but the ingredients that truly define the philosophy and where this approach becomes incredibly granular are the spices.
Yes, because when most of us use spices, we are solely chasing flavor.
Right.
Like, we add black pepper because we want something to taste sharp, or cinnamon because we want it to taste sweet. But the text reveals that in Indian menu planning, spices are chosen for bodily balance.
They are viewed through a medicinal, almost apothecary lens.
Yeah.
It is about understanding how the physical properties of a spice interact with your biology. This is deeply rooted in ancient Ayurvedic practices aimed at maintaining physical harmony and preventing illness through diet.
It's fascinating. The source lists black salt, cardamom pods, chiles, and fennel seeds as prime examples. Yes, fennel is fragrant and chiles are hot, but Batra specifically notes they are utilized because they actively aid digestion. The heat from a chile physically stimulates the body, kickstarting the digestive process.
And turmeric is another perfect example. It imparts that iconic, luxurious golden color to a dish, but its primary value in this traditional framework is its active antiseptic properties.
Wow.
It was literally used to protect the body.
And saffron, which is incredibly expensive and brings a beautiful floral note, is actually utilized as a stimulant. So when a host is putting together that wet and dry menu, they aren't just trying to make the food taste good. They are literally calculating the physiological impact of the meal on their guest's body. They are managing digestion, stimulation, and bodily heat.
You are tending to the guest's holistic physical well-being, not just their palate.
But I want to step back here and inject a reality check.
Okay?
We are talking about this idealized, perfectly balanced, elaborately spiced, multi-dish banquet. It's a beautiful concept, but it reminds me of assuming every single American family eats a flawless, magazine cover Thanksgiving feast every night of the week.
Right, right.
Does this elaborate standard represent the reality for everyone in India?
It absolutely does not. And our source material provides a very necessary critical lens to balance out Batra's cookbook.
Yeah.
Because while a cookbook inherently focuses on the ideal, the perfect nutritional harmony and the complete pantry, the text introduces the perspective of cultural anthropologist A.D.A. Ghosh to ground us in reality.
And Ghosh points out that regional variations and, more importantly, socioeconomic factors heavily dictate how food is actually prepared and served. It isn't a monolith.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ghosh brings this massive philosophical ideal back down to earth. She points out that the assumption that these elaborate presentations are universally appealing or achievable ignores the realities of how people actually live.
Right.
Not everyone has the time, the budget, or the resources to maintain a pantry full of saffron and 20 different spices, or to whip up a multi-course wet and dry banquet on a whim.
The text uses the specific example of complex dessert making, right?
Yeah.
In a wealthy coastal city, a beautifully plated, labor-intensive dessert might be the celebrated pinnacle of a meal. But in a rural mountain village, relying on complex sweets as the standard of a good meal might be completely irrelevant if sugar or dairy are luxury items.
And the danger is that if we strictly focus on this idealized standard of balance and aesthetics, We overshadow the beautiful, complex ways different communities adapt the spirit of hospitality.
Yeah.
India is vast. The culinary ethos of the coastal south is fundamentally different from the mountainous north. What looks like perfect hospitality in one region might be unrecognizable in another.
So, Atithi Devo Bhava, treating the guest as God, remains the universal cultural heartbeat.
Yes,
But the physical manifestation of that hospitality adapts to the reality of the resources available. A family with limited means offering a simple, hot cup of tea and a single biscuit with genuine warmth is practicing the exact same philosophy as the wealthy host serving a 15-dish banquet.
exactly.
It's the intention, not the inventory.
That is the core insight. We have to hold both truths simultaneously. We can admire the beautiful, intricate architecture of the idealized banquet while also respecting the grounded, diverse reality of regional socioeconomic practices. The philosophy scales to fit the reality.
Which brings us entirely back to you listening to this right now. Why does unpacking an Indian culinary philosophy from a cookbook matter for your life? Because it provides a completely new vocabulary for how you interact with your own kitchen. It takes meal prep, which is so easy to view as a tedious, inescapable daily chore, and reframes it. Cooking becomes a deliberate act of love, of biological balance, and of connection.
It gives you permission to stop treating hospitality as a performance to be graded on.
Exactly. You don't need to be cooking Indian food to apply this. Whether you are throwing together a quick Tuesday dinner for your kids or you are hosting a massive neighborhood party this weekend, you can channel the spirit of Atithi Devo Bhava.
Absolutely.
You can think about the variety on the plate. You can balance the textures so the palate doesn't get bored. You can add a simple garnish just to show someone they're worth the effort. You can make your guests and yourself feel truly deeply valued.
We've seen how deeply food and human connection are intertwined in this culture. They are inseparable. And I want to leave you with a thought to consider long after this deep dive ends. If the way we prepare and serve food reflects our deepest, most fundamental cultural values, how might the modern shift toward eating prepackaged meals entirely alone while staring at our screens be silently rewiring our capacity for empathy? What are we losing when we remove the shared table from our daily routine?
Wow. It definitely makes you want to rethink the spreadsheet approach to dinner, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to retire the air traffic control mindset, invite a friend over on a random Tuesday, and just treat them like a god for the evening. Until next time.